Welcome. A pop-up flash virtually connecting session from Berlin. We're really happy to be able to chat with Alec. We've been waiting for a chance to have a conversation with you, and we're glad that you are willing and able to connect with us today. Why don't we start with you in Berlin and then just go across the bottom to introduce the folks that are joining us today.
Sure, it's Alec Couros. I'm normally in Saskatchewan, Canada, but I'm here in Berlin. I was a speaker at the OEB, the Online Educa Berlin conference, and it's my first time in Berlin. A wonderful city, wonderful time. Really enjoyed the conference, and that's about me. So great to see everyone here, and if there are others out there online, hi everyone.
Well, hi again from me. It's Christian. I'm with Lighthearted Digital School and Hamburg University of Technology. And folks who have been following OEB 16 on Virtually Connecting probably have seen me a lot, so I'll just cut this short.
So, AK, Autumn.
Hello, everybody. I'm AK. My actual name is Apostolos, but I go AK. I work at UMass Boston, and I am generally an educational troublemaker.
And hi, I'm Autumn Keynes. I work at Capital University in Columbus, Ohio in the States, and I'm a co-director of Virtually Connecting. It's really exciting to be here, and it's exciting to have a pop-up Virtually Connecting session. I think that's really cool, and I want to hear the story about how this happened.
And we'll go to Dimitris and then Maha.
Hello, I'm Dimitris Juris at the American College of Thessaloniki at Anatolia College in Greece. And I just love pop-up things.
Hi, Dimitris. I'm Mahabeli from Cairo, Egypt. I'm the co-director of Virtually Connecting. And someone was asking how this pop-up happened. I think in the last session, someone talked about Alec's session. And while they were talking, I'm like, that sounds like Alec Couros you guys are talking about. I was like, he's in Berlin. How could we not talk to him? So I tweeted to him. And I didn't actually think he was going to see the tweet, but he did. And Christian was willing, and it's so great. And then Alec came in 15 minutes early to the hangout, and I was like, yeah, but you're 2 years late. And actually, Virtually Connecting has only been around for a year and a half, not 2 years. So it's he's not that late. It's so good to have him.
Sorry, this is like to an offline now.
Oh, it's great. Our third just arrived.
It's so long.
And the joy of pop-up Virtually Connecting sessions is you never know who's going to pop in, and we're really happy, very, very happy, Christian, that you could take some time to do this.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, so it's really good. I think, Ilona, you won't be staying with us, or?
No, I'm going to another session, but we talked already. So I'm glad you are still on, still awake.
So the conversation, Alec, about your session this morning or earlier today.
Oh, you want me to fill in what I talked about? Okay.
Just the vibes of the feel of what you've been experiencing.
Well, it was an interesting conversation. So where do I start? I mean, yesterday I came in and there was a number of really interesting speakers in the first plenary. Kind of all over the place in terms of style and content, I would say. And so I actually just kind of spotted out the plenary because I didn't know what the style was here, and so I kind of wanted to make sure that I was okay there. So I think my style was a little bit out there when I came to sort of like the pseudo-academic. Well, it's an academic plus corporate plus K-12, sort of all sort of venues, and sometimes you, if you've been to a straight academic conference, they can be very dry. But I found that it's been a lot of fun. There were a lot of really good ideas, really eclectic speakers in terms of style and content, and I've been very happy. I think it was a fun session. Lots of different examples of how people present, but also the knowledge that they brought in. My particular session was around some of the sort of the techno-utopian narratives that we bring, and I went back in time talking about, 1 second, about 15 years ago is the sort of the anniversary of the network teacher diagram that I did. And so, which is a long time ago, and thinking about, sort of the birth of PLNs and personal learning networks. And so I looked at that and a lot of open learning, and then I sort of ended in thinking of some of the real problems with that. Thinking about, as I asked my students to learn in the open, whether it's, we talked about the learning project, which I can explain later on, what sort of world on the internet am I actually asking them to get into? And so I talked a little bit about, the gendered and racial harassment that many users face that I don't experience to the same extent as many others. I talked about, the need for information literacy, especially if you look at the idea of the post-truth world, as Oxford puts it. Since the changes in the U.S. most recently, and just trying to understand how do we actually, and I also talked about digital identity, and how do we actually develop a digital identity. But I also talked about my own sort of catfishing experience that many of you are aware of. The people using my photographs in dating sites and so on. I actually got one on my Facebook page this morning. It was apparently on Tinder, which was hilarious. A friend of, it's hilarious and sad at the same time, but a friend of mine, Lee Colbert from Florida, it popped up on her Tinder. There's a picture of me with my kids, and we're going down an amusement ride, and it's sort of this ongoing thing. But in all of this, when we talk about these techno-utopian narratives, how do we actually talk to our students really truthfully about, yes, there's great advantages of learning in the open, learning in networks and so on, but what problems do we also expose them to, whether it's information literacy problems or problems of identity, problems of harassment. And I think we just have to, I think as educators, we owe them a much more truthful conversation than I think is sometimes happening. So that was the gist of my talk.
Tim, could you mute? I think that was Tim Riley who just joined us. Maybe he just needs to mute. Or...
Yes, thank you.
Could you introduce yourself and then mute again?
My name's Tim Riley. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska.
Hi, Tim. Great to see you.
Okay, hi.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, I'm very interested in these questions around digital literacy and digital citizenship and all of this kind of thing. Where does it belong in terms of formal education? There's a huge push in the K through 12 environment, but in higher education, how do we start dealing with it? How do we grow the conversation? How do we take all the great work that's being done in the K through 12 environment and start talking about it in higher education? And then also, what do we call it? I hear so many terms, right? Information literacy, digital citizenship. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I do. A couple. So digital citizenship is probably one of my least favorite terms because it basically rips out the heart of what citizenship is and basically turns it into etiquette. Be nice online. And that sucks to me. I'm sorry. So all the really important parts of what, if you separate digital citizenship and citizenship, you're missing all the important things. And I think we do a disservice to developing citizens if we continue to just, be nice online, be safe online. And it's really the same narrative since the about 1995 when the internet first came on. When the internet used to be a place to look up stuff before it was a place in, say, 2005 to actually create and share and collaborate. So yeah, I think it's much more housed in the area of literacy than anything, not citizenship. But at the same time, there are things from Ribble's, piece, his 9 elements, everything from e-commerce to, privacy and safety, rights and responsibilities. There's a lot within that space that we can certainly get into. It's the social activism bit. It's the keeping the web free and safe and neutral and those sorts of things that we kind of miss. And there was actually the end speaker up talk. Yeah, Mark from Mozilla, he's actually based in Toronto, talked very much about, preserving a free web. In terms of where this happens, I mean, I love seeing examples like Kathy Cassidy in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, who basically has student blogs at grade 1. We know that kids now at about the age of 9 are typically on sites like Musical.ly and Instagram and so on. And I know this not only from what I read statistically, but also I work with a lot of K-12 students. I've just worked with some in Tokyo. I worked with some back in Ontario, and I'm constantly doing that. Whenever I survey students, they tell me when they've got their first adult social networking account, Instagram or Snapchat or whatever else. And we know it's on an average roughly 9 to 10 years of age. So if we are basically in the reality of students having an account that can one tweet can disrupt their lives for good or for bad, we need to be talking about this from a developmental stage. That's why I love seeing grade 1, 2, 3 teachers having a Twitter account. There's a tweeter by the name of Simply Susie. I forget where she's from. She has like a worksheet with 140 squares on it, and she gets students to suggest tweets, and they vet it as a classroom as grade 1s. And I just love that idea that we're vetting, and the whole idea of think before you post. They're living it. I mean, they're actually doing that as a classroom activity, and then the teacher models that for them. I would say somewhere in the middle years, you certainly start to build. I mean, I think portfolios start at grade 1, but in middle years, you start to skirt with the outside world a little bit. By high school, I think that you should have a fully developed outside presence. I mean, a grade 12 present for me would be a domain name, and then that sort of idea. It actually, you go and you move towards whether that happens there, whether it happens in the step, like as many of you, the University of Mary Washington has the project called Domains of One's Own, the idea of having a domain. Like, this is something that's really important. If we really respect the web, we want to live there. We want to reside there. We no longer want to rent. And I think that's a really important idea, is if we want to make the web a responsible and free place, we have to habitate there, I guess, in some ways, live there, reside there, because I think we are much more responsible for the communities that we live in. And I think a big part of what we need to do is do things like this, interact, understand, connect in different ways, but really live what it means to be sort of a citizen, whether that's on the web or elsewhere.
That's also something
Sorry, go ahead.
In this session, but what does it mean to be digital literate, media literate,
yes,
in a post-Trump or even a Trump presidency, and then all that basically entails in terms of, I mean, Mark Sermon presented the Mozilla web literacy map at the end, and that's really something that really connects all together there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry.
Christiana, I was thinking of your session yesterday towards openness and safety that you talked about, and it had those provocations. And actually, a lot of the things that Alec's talking about, each of the different provocations sort of, I talk about domain of one's own or just ownership and how that's a problematic concept. And Nishant talks about safety and that it's not about being safe, but it's a more complicated conversation. But I was also going to comment on it sort of related to the fact of, what about younger people when they're on social media? And something related to Facebook that I was writing about yesterday is that Facebook the algorithm on Facebook prevented me from posting an article about listening to students. I don't know if you saw that, because I referred to what happened to you, obviously, which is much worse. But the article was about listening to students, and Facebook thought that it was abuse. And we're like thinking, what is wrong with this algorithm? That it would allow people to catfish Alec Couros and Alan Levine and kick Tressie McMillan Cottom out of Facebook. And of course, fake news is like a big thing, but that an article about listening to students is abusive. But I was also, in that conversation, a lot of people on Twitter, we were talking about, well, how does Facebook actually try to prevent abuse? And thinking about 9 or 10-year-olds being on it, and what if they come across something that is really unsafe, either unsafe as in death threats or something like really, really unsafe like that, or just something like inappropriate, like porn or whatever. And how do we do that in ways that don't end up having the algorithm prevent a regular article about listening to students being labeled abuse?
But I have some insight into that. I was at a conference in Hawaii a month ago or so, and I met Dr. Mark Brackett from Yale, and he does a lot of work in social emotional intelligence. And supposedly he was part of a Facebook study. Now, it was more geared at how users deal with bullying. So young people, if they are bullied, or perhaps I think it was also extended to suicide if they have, suicidal ideations that they express on Facebook. How does Facebook deal with those in a timely way? So I think they've been working on the reporting system. When it comes to other things like the catfishing and all those sorts of things, it's a total flop. What's also interesting about the Yale one, I asked, is this available in Canada? And they're like, no. So I don't think so. But I mean, so really, it's only in the U.S. I don't know how effective it is. And it just seems like there's these little fixes, like bullying's an issue. So let's deal with bullying. But harassment is such a much bigger issue. Fake IDs are a much bigger issue. And talking about how the algorithm, when you say Maha, the idea of posting voices of kids and getting blocked, whereas I have my Facebook account has been taken off several times, and I've been there since 2006, I believe. I have 2,000 or 3,000 friends. I've established a relationship. Then an account comes out that's like 6 hours old and reports me, and that report has some sort of greater weight than my entire account. And that's what I don't understand. There are such easy pieces within the algorithm just that don't absolutely make sense. Or if 100 people or 200 people report the same account that's clearly using my photographs, why isn't it taken down? Why does it continue to stay up there? And every single day I get, now it's the last couple of days in Berlin, it's been more like 10, but average 3 or 4 or 5 new fake profiles every day using my photos. Sometimes, most of the time, they're using a different name, and sometimes they just use my name as well. So it's scary for me, and not scary, sad in some ways, that if I ever really wanted to leave Facebook, I couldn't, because the imposters would basically subsume that. They would take over the role. They take over me. So I almost think that this is, let's go with conspiracy theories. The long road for Facebook and Google and so on is the money that comes in terms of verification. Beyond government passports, IDs, it's just the idea that they control the idea of authenticating our identity to one another. And I think, let's let these problems persist until the public screens for this. And then no one will care about the real name policy or all these other things. So anyway, chalk that up to conspiracy theories or maybe something that's real. I don't know.
Well, and one of the things that bothered me the other day, I posted a thing on Facebook because there was a BuzzFeed article, and it was almost like a digital literacy thing. It was like a digital literacy point that they were trying to make, that you can help with fake news, right? Mm-hmm. You can go in and you can tag fake news, and this is what you should do. And it really bothered me because I know that Facebook fired their human editors. Right, so they made the choice to fire their human editors, and now they're asking I guess they're not, but this BuzzFeed article is now asking the citizenry, right, the people that use the user base of Facebook to go in and filter out this fake news. And there's like a little blurb at the end about how to find fake news, but it was really more about where to click. Yeah. And it just really bothered me. And yeah, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. They have the technology to figure out what a person's face is, right? So why wouldn't they be able to figure out that it's your account, it's your face?
Yeah, I put a video up a while ago. Like VK.com is the Russian or Ukrainian Facebook. And if I basically upload any of my photos, it'll do a facial recognition, and it'll show like 60, 70 fake accounts with my photos. So the facial recognition exists. The problem is, and I understand why they haven't just put it up there. I mean, they could do it internally, but if it's from the external piece, think about those in witness protection programs, police people, policemen, that you may see on the streets, or anyone who wants to protect your identity. Like ultimately, if we have a photo of a person, we can find where they live online. So there's so much problematic around this whole idea. I think it's a bit scary.
But Facebook does use the facial recognition thing. When you put a photo, it does tell you who's on it, right?
Yes, and sometimes this new account just showed up. Is this a fake account? So 1 out of maybe 100. I know Dean Sharesky's been talking about that lately, but he's starting to get the reports. So they're starting to install this piece. So there is some facial recognition that's available that's starting to use for detection scamming, but it's honestly 1 in 100 maybe.
I find it interesting to, out of my conversations with Nishan, but also just about a year ago I met, and I had to look this up, I met Malavika Yayaram, I think it's pronounced, from India. She's, not self-proclaimed, but she's something like Miss Copyright India is what she was called once. She's a lawyer who's at the Berkman Center, and now I think somewhere based in India, in Singapore. And the whole idea of collecting biometrical information in India is really something that you can both look at in awe and also in like, where could this go in terms of like collection of data and also private hosting of data and private usage of data on the one hand, but also in terms of identification purposes, because ID cards don't really exist for everybody, at least in India, and they are basically collecting biometrical information privately and hosting it privately in order to be able to identify everybody online and offline as well. So that's really an interesting spin from there, at least I think.
Yeah. It's a bit of a scary world when it comes to identity, I think. Even from, and there were discussions around, insurance companies, wanting to, check your vital stats because they can decide who to insure and who not to, and who to pay higher premiums from, and certainly anyone's medical history can be an incredible deficit to them when coming up to an insurance premium. Yeah, whether someone's hired even. I could see on the road Oculus glasses or embedded in contact lenses, which there's already patents for those things, and looking at someone's biometric data. I mean, if we move towards that, I mean, could you imagine? There's all sorts of issues in terms of privacy and how that can be used against you, prejudice and so on. So it's a brave. Well, so let's go on to something less negative for the last 5 minutes.
I was gonna say, we were talking about the secret society of moving towards open, and maybe we should be doing a little bit, thinking differently.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Anna.
I was just going to say, I don't know if, I don't think open necessarily has to mean irresponsible, right? I think that open cares about these kind of questions. I guess I also want to say I'm going to have to run because I have a meeting in 5 minutes, but this has been really great. So thanks for that. But yeah, I'm going to let you guys respond to that.
I mean, the discussions I usually have with Nishan that we had at the beginning when we thought about towards openness is that it's much harder, but also much more fruitful when you're able to argue for something instead of against something. Yeah. So if you are able to argue for openness because, and then you bring in perspectives, or if you're able to argue for a different point of view and make that argument and keep on making that argument, that's much more fruitful than being against something, even though that is needed quite often, right? I agree. I mean, we couldn't be doing today what we're doing right now without openness, and that's a value to me. That's value to anyone watching. Anyone who's participating. Most of us wouldn't know each other. Most of us. I mean, I'm the only ed tech person for the last 17 years. I've been the ed tech person in my faculty of ed, and I mean, you and everyone here and those people I talk to on Twitter have been my virtual department. I mean, really so in many ways. I guess I could say that I don't really need one. I'm hoping I still do get a real hire at some point. But this idea that this virtual campus, my virtual college, allows me to learn at a, I mean, PLNs to me are still as alive as they've always been. I find that, the conversations, as people's networks grow, the conversations can become a bit more distributed and weakened and so on, but that's really an intentionality piece. Like, how do we actually bring attention to connecting with specific people? And I've been trying my best to, send DMs and connect with people, and I learned a lot from that. There was a person who passed away in Philadelphia not too long ago, which a lot of people knew, and he just, he's someone I used to be connected to on the web all the time,
and then just didn't notice him, and then the next thing you know, he's died as a homeless person. And you know, thinking about how we lose connection, and you know, the understanding that networks and friends and communities, or you know, networks, communities, and groups. I mean, Stephen Downs is here as well, and he talks a lot about that idea. But you know, moving from a network to a community, or to a group, or then even down to a community, is really an important idea. How do we strengthen those ties? Like I talked a little bit about, you know, Granovetter's notion of the strength of weak ties today. But the strength of weak ties doesn't ensure the safety, mutuality, you know, the sincere kindness sometimes that we often get. The close connections are really important. So while then the strength of weak ties is really great for crowdsourcing. You know, and I often talk about this when my father passed away. You know, back in 2013, just seeing the openness of support, the pouring out of love and, you know, sincere compliments on my Facebook wall, that's one of those things that carries you through. I mean, that's a difference between a network and a community. A network doesn't do that. A community cares. So anyway, I'm all kind of tearing up here, but that's important. So when we think about network learning, let's not forget about the communities that network learning inspire. I know I'm crying here.
Yeah, no, and
I'm crying with you.
Ultimately, really, that's the difference with virtually connecting as a community, versus a network, like a loosely joined group of people who are talking about stuff together.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's how we extend it, each and every one of us. I mean, this will happen, and then there's those DMs, and then there's those, you know, those connections, and then we see each other, and then we hug, and it's there's something to it, and I mean, that's the most important story here. You know, for me, the number of hugs that I got when I got here, because I know people or I haven't seen them for years, and so if we could have a hug count, I mean, that's the success of a conference to me.
Next time you will have somebody.
This came up.
We just go like 200 hugs or something like that. Yeah. Pokemon, yeah. You got Pokemon after 200 hugs or something. Anyways,
I think I still have the task of connecting, right? So let's end on a lighter note and take one.
All right.
Nice.
We got it.
Nice one.
Good. That's funny.
So I'll keep this out later. I'm not sure. We don't want to take too much of your time.
I'm fine as long as you need me, but if there are questions.
Have to be in any session.
Oh yeah, I'm
sure there are lots of questions.
I'm gonna go walk around. I have this cupcake here. I'm 45 years old, and it was the best cupcake I've ever had in my life. It was just I've never had a cupcake like that. It was amazing. Seriously, I was like, I can't believe I waited this long to eat this cupcake. It was amazing.
Is there anything like, can you guess what's in it? Can you guess what's special about it? Like what's in it?
I have no idea, but it was just beautiful. Like it was a milk chocolate thing, and there was the stuff on top that's on everything. I don't know, the chocolate, kind of chocolate stuff.
That was here?
That was here at when you walked down to the little village thing with all the outside
with the vendors
and stuff. I had a cupcake there. I went back to find it again. It's gone. It's like one of those movies where you go back and it's like it was a magic cupcake. This place never existed at all. Like I need to go back to get one, and I could not find this place. I looked all over the place. Couldn't find the cupcakes.
It was a pop-up cupcake vendor.
Yeah,
it's actually a paradox. A cupcake vendor came from the future to give you a good cupcake so that you can invent the recipe so that it can exist in the future.
That could be. I like that, Apostles.
Is there a DeLorean close by?
There's no DeLorean, yeah, unfortunately. So yeah, but it was amazing. I must say, like, I wish I could give every one of you that cupcake because you'd be all like, "This is amazing." Seriously, yeah. No, it was good. All the food's been fantastic, and that's true. So, as I mentioned before, I think the people who were in the thing, I also caught the European Pokemon while I was here. This was really important because So in Europe, there's a Mr. Mime that's only available. Anyone's actually out there. Here we go. So Mr. Mime, he's a bit creepy. He's probably the creepiest of the Pokemon, really. But he only exists in Europe. And so I caught him and I logged into my children's phones until there are Pokemon accounts so I could catch them for them as well. And I did the same when I was in Tokyo a while ago to get the Farfetch'd. So I just need to get to Australia now, and I've got all of the region-specific Pokemon, and I'll be quite happy to. But it was, you know, so I texted my kids when they left school, my 9-year-old and 12-year-old, and I said, "Look at your Pokemon accounts," and my son's expression was like, "What?" It was amazing. So they were quite happy. So that's one of the benefits. I felt like my work was done. I was almost going to leave home before doing the plenary, really. So it's time to go now.
Okay. Another VC virtually connecting first.
Of course.
So just conscious and aware of the time. What I'll do is stop the broadcast, but we can still stay and hang out informally if you'd like. Just knowing that way you can head out when you're ready to stop. So stopping the broadcast. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Pop-up